thing that I do is the other thing that I do is like help entrepreneurs get more organized. So if they're looking to scale, like how can I support them in getting organized with workflows, you know, systems, things like that. So I'm very ordered. And then this other part of me that's very creative, I kind of somewhat shy away from and have this like doubt and not quite believing that I can do it. So yeah, I have all the ideas, but yeah, still sort of shying away from it. So my big plan for 2022 is to do a documentary on my family. So some kind of story around that. I've never made a documentary. I obviously have the background in photography, but yeah, that's the plan. That's the nutshell version. There's so much more in between.
I want a documentary about you making your first documentary. So like the behind the scenes, you know, so then I can learn how to make a documentary.
Well, we're recording part of it right now.
That's right.
Yeah. I'll record all these Zoom meetings.
That's really cool. That's awesome, Jackie. It's really nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all. Do we get a quick intro from everyone of who two?
We
We're
will
kind of bored with each other. No, I'm kidding.
We'll popcorn around. Let's go name, location, and one sweet thing that happened this weekend, aside from watching my video, because nobody can say that one. It's a given. Annie, will you lead us off?
Sure. So I'm Annie. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. And one sweet thing that happened this weekend, he can hear me, so I'm self-conscious. My husband is from Ireland, a part of Ireland that doesn't get much snow. So he'd never been sledding before. So we went sledding this weekend. And if you've ever seen an adult have a childlike enjoyment of something, it was wonderful. What about Cami?
Hello, I'm Cami. I'm also in St. Louis, Missouri, although I'm pet sitting right now in Florissant. Let's see, one sweet thing that happened this weekend. The company that I work for celebrated its 5th year in existence, so that was pretty exciting. The owner of the company is kind of going through a rough personal patch, and I'm her executive assistant, so it's been a time. So celebrating with them was really fun with my coworkers to be able to see them outside of work and actually their full faces because we weren't wearing masks. So that was fun. Let's see, Seville, how about you?
So I'm in Huntsville, Ontario, Canada, and this weekend, so yesterday we had our opening call to the wellness stroll, and it was such a great call, so many great people there. I was just beaming for the rest of the day, just the connection and having like this support around wellness and being well, because January was probably my healthiest month, just like mentally and emotionally for me. So I'm just so grateful. And I cried yesterday. I didn't think I cried. Like I'm almost crying right now. Anyways, great day. That was a highlight of my weekend. Okay, Sarah.
Hi, sorry, I'm reading to my kid. I'm Sarah, and I am in Des Moines, Iowa. And I think you said something sweet that happened this weekend. My husband and I finally went out for a date. We went to a movie last night. Andrew is my husband, and we went and saw Spider-Man last night. Yeah, it's really good. Sad, but good. So.
And what are you reading?
We are reading The Little Engine That Could.
Wow, classic. Love it.
So sorry. Once they go to bed, you will have my full attention. We are half here. Oh, and I'm popcorning to Nathaniel.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm Nathaniel, or NC, Nathaniel Carroll. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, United States. Cami, I'm not far from you, probably. I live in a very small town within St. Louis called Delwood. A highlight this weekend definitely was the wellness call. And then Catherine, my partner, made a chicken dinner. Like we roasted a whole chicken and then a bunch of delicious sides, and it was just kind of an unexpected project that we started in the beginning of the afternoon, and now I have a full belly, so I'm happy about that. Let's see. Nicole, I see that you're on. Are you with us?
I am. So I'm Nicole and I'm in Akron, Ohio. I'm at my grandmother's house and I forgot my webcam. So I am here, although distracted. The sweet thing that I made happen this weekend is I made double chocolate chip cookies just a couple hours ago. But I've also had some sledding adventures, which was the joy of the season, right?
Word.
Totally agree.
I think that's me then.
Did nobody call on Tony?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Tony.
Thanks, Nicole. A sweet thing that happened. I ended up falling asleep in my son's bed last night with him for like 2 hours, and that was the first time in his life that has happened. Where it's like where he like won't sleep if I'm there. So the fact that we made that happen was, yeah, that was like the month. I think that made the month. So, but I mean, he's such a punk. It was like 9:30. He kept coming out of his room. We don't need to get into it, but yeah, that was really sweet. Okay, so we're talking about branding. My thought process on how to approach this, there were it's easy since we've got a few people who have some experience and some different angles on it. I was thinking that maybe we treat this as kind of a case study approach where since Cami was the one who conceived of this idea, that Cami present us with her motivation and what she's up to, and we can kind of throw some ideas out there, kick some things around. I think Sarah might also have something she's interested in jamming on a little bit in terms of her own like editing business she's working on developing. And yeah, that's my thought process. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, cool. Then Cami, what are we doing here?
Great question. Okay, so I feel like this question came up for me as I've been thinking about my photography and like where to go from here. And this is so stupid, but I was thinking about it in terms of my Instagram account. So I have an Instagram account for like my personal stuff, whatever. And then I have a photography Instagram account. And I really hate the name of it. It's just Cami Kaz Photography. And so I was like thinking about changing it, and that kind of brought up a lot more questions than just changing the name of it. But in terms of like branding, not only thinking about like my photography, but I do other stuff too, right? Like, so I like write and I do other creative projects, but I don't know if I should be separating those things out from my photography if I feel like I eventually want to make money off of my photography, or do like more formal, real projects with it. And the other stuff is more like for fun, I guess. I don't know. I just kind of got all caught up in all of those questions of like, what do I do with this? And what does this even mean? And what does it look like? And what platforms do I need to be using? And maybe that's like specific because of the field, but I feel like that's, I don't know. I feel like there's carryover between multiple people. Like I know Sarah had questions too. But I just think I don't know what I don't know when it comes to branding and creating a brand. If I don't even like thinking about it in those terms because it feels very like corporate to me, but also like I realize that it can be helpful. And so I have that within me of this, like, is this even a conversation I want to be having? It is, but it's still confusing. Is that enough information? I feel like that's like, I just don't know what else to ask yet, I think.
that's a pretty good start. Can you tell us a little more about your photography?
Yes. So I have been taking pictures for a long time, but got more serious about it in 2018, and I'm mostly self-taught. I've taken a few classes here and there, and I've loved being in those spaces, love being in the dark room. I do film as well as digital, and have a lot of content that I realized I hadn't been sharing. So I'm starting to figure out how to do that even more so. And recently, like over the past 2 years, I would say, have been slowly getting asked to do pictures for certain things, whether that be like friends I know who want me to take pictures of an event or something like that. Or like I recently reached out to an organization that I was connected with a few years ago who did like a call for photographers to take pictures for them. And like, so even thinking about creating like a portfolio of like when there are like freelance opportunities, to be able to show people like, hey, yes, I am like an amateur, like I didn't go to school for this, but I'm still serious about it and still have something to offer possibly.
Cool. I think that's pretty good. There are a couple of things coming to mind. If anybody has other questions for Cami, but then also it seems like it makes sense that we kind of pop around to people who, let's say, like have branding or I would say even marketing experience, and just kind of lay that out. So because I think we've got some different backgrounds and different perspectives coming at this question. Annie, will you lead us off in just kind of laying out your domain expertise?
Yeah. So I work for a marketing agency here in St. Louis. They have a bunch of different specialties, but one of them is branding. So companies pay them a lot of money to have our creative director go in with like their 12 execs and sit down and do this months-long process to figure out all the questions that Cami you just raised. I am not part of that. I watch it happen. Basically, I'm a copywriter, so I just have to know the voice and stuff like that. So I basically sit there and watch this process happen. It's painful. I'll tell you that. It's very painful. But I actually think so there's 101 different marketing gurus out there, branding gurus that have written books, and like agencies tend to follow, one or the other. They have a blueprint that they work off of. My agency is based on Simon Sinek first. Do you guys know Start With Why? You guys familiar with that? So they start with that and then continue with the story brand system, which I think, Jackie, were you talking about that? I think Donald Miller and you, yeah. So that's kind of the system that they follow. Both recommend checking that out. I think the story brand system would really resonate with this group, just based on, it's based on the hero's journey and stuff like that. So that's kind of where my background lies.
Cool. Jackie.
Yes.
Your background in this vicinity, do you have, aside from kind of being a story brand enthusiast?
No, that's
Okay.
it. I just started reading a book. I'm taking a bunch of notes in Notion and
Okay.
like having the framework within Notion. So I have that. And when I get through that, I'm happy to share it. So I've taken all the notes in there.
All right.
But I don't have any experience. I'm just going through it myself for my more ordered life. So
All right.
I'm here to learn.
Fantastic. All right. Nicole, if you're available.
Yeah, I'm here. I promise I'm listening and watching the
You're
whole
good.
thing. I'm
You're
here.
good.
So right now I'm working as an online business developer and SEO strategist. And part of that is branding, but I'm not a branding expert. But your kind of case study really excites me because I worked in arts for 8 years and I served as a curator for 4. And out of that, a couple of my artists became really successful under I guess my advisory, whatever leadership on their branding. And one of those is the artist that I'm working with right now, who had a successful Kickstarter with his tarot deck and stuff. So I really love, what I love about branding is that it's just, it's basically a story. And it's a story that you're telling through text and visual information. And there's a lot of creativity to it. So I think that once you dive into it, it's not going to feel like a boxy business thing. It's really a very creative process that I think is going to end up resonating with you. So I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Cool, thank you. And I would most definitely not call myself a branding expert. I am a branding novice who in the last 6 months I've learned a fair amount. I did a sprint, like a 4-month sprint with section 4 on brand strategy ahead of taking this role. And the role that I have at MMG is basically as the sales and marketing department. And one of the things I'm responsible for is, I wouldn't call it a branding overhaul so much as designing and figuring out what the brand is to begin with for a company that's existed for 10 years. And we're using StoryBrand for what we're doing as well. So, and then I guess I spend a fair amount of time thinking about branding for things like, you know, the thing we're sitting in right now. So cool.
Which, like, Tony, just to go off of that, like, I don't know, I've thought a lot about this in terms of like the shift from Access to the Rowdy Creative and just like what that has done, and like even the name change, being able to like give that to someone and like they like automatically understand something about what's happening versus Access being like, what are you talking about? Not that that was a bad name, but just that, like,
It was.
yeah, even that shift, you know.
No, it's true. I do say now that Axis was indeed a bad name. It gets a bad name when people don't understand what it is, even when you, because acronyms are annoying to begin with. And then when you explain what the acronym means and people still don't understand what it is. Yeah, now this name's way better. But I do, piggybacking off of what Nicole said about how it can be creative and a story in a way that I think may resonate with you, Cami. To me, branding, it's simply, it's not a great word in just in how it feels, but I've kind of jujitsu'd it for myself where I've gotten really comfortable with the term simply as a way of like, we're all presenting ourselves to the world like all the time. We're doing that in real life. We're doing it in virtual spaces. It's just happening. And branding is trying to exercise a level of intentionality around how people see you. And to me, it's a sort of thing where like, I think about it in terms of authenticity being paramount. But then within authenticity, there's any number of ways somebody can go with it. Like you can, like the Rowdy Creative very well could have been a very serious brand. It could have been like serious and severe and you know, all business when it comes to our creative work. And that very well could have been authentic as well. But what we went with and or maybe that wouldn't have been authentic. Maybe that would have been trying to force it a little bit. It would have been trying to force it. Yeah.
We would have lasted one call, Tony, at least with this clown. So.
But yes, I think when I think about the Rowdy and what we've done here, and we could run through the whole story brand script, but it really is just a matter of like saying, okay, so we're transitioning from Axis, the thing that is a mystery to everybody, even to some people within the thing. So when we go to the Rowdy and we're going to be turning our way outward, like how do we do that in a way that people see something that is, number one, authentic, and number two, appealing, because we want people to come toward us, right? And kind of that's what guided our thinking on that. But I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. Annie.
I would argue, I know some people don't like Simon Sinek, but I do like the golden circle and the start with your why. I would argue that comes back to your why, Tony. You know, you guys you weren't trying to be, you know, an exclusive group, right? Your whole why was to connect with other creatives. And so the rebrand was kind of fueled by that why, right? If I'm interpreting correctly.
Yeah.
So anyway, if anybody is not familiar with Simon Sinek, his whole deal is don't focus on what you're selling, you focus on why you're doing it, why you're selling it, or what, you know, whatever you're doing. Basically, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, I think is his tagline.
Yeah.
So for creatives, I feel like that's a good place to start.
Yeah. So like for the Rowdy, very simply, like our why is because the world needs people to get more creative. The how is through bringing creatives together to make more work and support one another in doing their work. And the what? Virtual community called the Rowdy Creative, right? So it's like, yeah, what Amy's saying is like that the what, I mean, it changed overnight, literally, right? Like, but the why has been the same for 5 years. So yeah, I think that's spot on.
Yeah, I'm interested to know kind of, Cami, if you've thought about your why, because that kind of comes back to, you have all these irons in the fire, right? And all these ideas, and products are always changing and offerings are always changing. But like Tony said, as much as it changes, the why was still the same.
Yeah,
That's deep.
Yeah. Well, and even just like what he was just talking about, I think I'm trying to think about all of this even more broadly, because to me, a brand feels like constrictive sometimes, in that like, this is what you're known for, and therefore you have to be that, and that's what people expect from you. And so I feel like, I don't know, like, I'm sure the why is still the same for all of this, but like the step below that of like what then is produced out of that, I feel like for me is still a huge wide range in terms of like what it is, like you were saying, like products change, whatever. And even like when Tony, you were talking about like seriousness of like level of seriousness with things, like I feel like within some of my work, it can, or I would like the like freedom to do something more serious and something totally ridiculous, because I have content that spans all of that. But I just don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say right now. I'm trying to say that I think I mean, survival, honestly, when we're coming down to it, like I do this because like that is how I survive day to day. Like that is how I get from today to tomorrow, is like I have to create. That is, there is no other way for me. And I've tried and it doesn't work. But I like, that's kind of really broad, and like I need to like figure that out more and probably put some more parameters around that. And I think, okay, I got my question. We've come back around. I'm trying to figure out for myself is like this kind of desire to be more like generalistic, or like have a lot of things going on, because I haven't figured out what like my why is more specifically, and I'm just like maybe too scatterbrained to like afraid to commit to one thing so that I can have all of these options, or if it can be leveraged like in a positive way, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
I think so. When you say like a bunch of things going on, you mean beyond photography, right? You mean photography
Yes.
and other stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I would say like I am someone who is I know a lot, like I know a little bit about a lot of things. And that's like outside of creativity as well. Like that's just in my regular life. But I don't know a huge depth of thing about any one thing in particular.
Mhm.
And I think that I have probably the most leverage and like energy and commitment to photography, but I don't necessarily want to exclude, like I think the other stuff that I do creatively can actually enhance that, but I just haven't figured out how.
When you think about branding, do you think about limiting yourself in terms of like so you're wondering whether the way to approach your personal brand is to say like, I am a photographer who does this?
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm wondering if it's not helpful if I don't do that. I'm trying to think of like an example of like where like someone's just doing too much and you got to be like, whoa, just cut all that other crap out and just like do this thing that you're actually trying to do, and you know, do it well. But I can't think of an example right now.
So I actually have, sorry to just jump in because
Okay.
I haven't been here, so I hope I'm not like
Please.
saying randomness, but I sort of have like a similar, it's different but similar question for myself, which is like, so I sort of think of myself as these two things, an editor and a writer. And yes, they are in the same like arena, but when I'm sort of like trying to build a brand, I've really been torn as to like how to do that. So I feel like I sort of have to have two brands, right? Because I'm trying to do like two different things. I'm trying to edit, but I'm also trying to write. And so like right now I'm building this website with my sister-in-law, and I'm really just doing an editing website because like, well, for one thing, I don't really have like anything to sell in terms of writing at this moment anyway. So, but yeah, that's sort of like my question too, is like, am I ultimately going to be building like two brands, one as an editor and one as a writer? And that's sort of what I'm also trying to figure out, Cami.
Yes, great question.
I actually have two case studies that speak to this in my experience with artists. One artist works across genre, and most creative people don't like being boxed into one art form or one genre. And then the other case study is someone who was doing way too many things, and it became very clear that something surfaced that he needed to capitalize on. And in both cases, they worked. So the person who was working across genres and being prolific, making a lot of things, it did come down to that why, and focusing on why am I doing this body of work, not why am I creating. And for her, the thread between everything in her work had to do with loss and grief, that she was exploring very deeply that emotion. And then once that body of work kind of ran its course, she moved on to something else. But it was always about why am I creating this body of work? And the other person was the artist that I referred to earlier. He was into photography and making films and drawing a lot. And then it became really clear that just through the experimentation and the sales of his work, the public was starting to see him in a specific way. And even though he honed on and narrowed himself into not a genre, but his brand, it's still speaking personally to him because he made it. Like, you're still making it, and you're not necessarily boxing yourself in by cutting things out. You're just getting closer and closer to your identity, to your work. And it's not that you can't break from it, but when you're presenting yourself to the public, it can be helpful to be very clear on what you're doing. So in the first case, I'm being very clear that I'm talking about mourning and death and loss. And for him, it was about sharing joy in a very specific way. I don't know if that helps or if that's clear.
Yeah, like Cami, so we've known each other just through this group. And I haven't until today, I hadn't seen your photography. But what I knew about you is you are working on a really exciting project to me personally, which is your grief project. And when my partner, Catherine, had melanoma, you were the first person to say, what can I do? Do you need food? And you brought over the best meal for us. Enchilada is a special little like tort that you had made. And so for me, like part of your brand in my mind is maybe caring or connection. Compassion is kind of a theme we had in our wellness stroll. So I don't know if anyone that's like doing branding work, is this part of the exercise, just sort of like figuring out, like toss all the words on the page of like, here's what I want people to know when they interact with me, or when we're done, if I die tomorrow, what do I want to be remembered for, that sort of thing.
Word cloud, do a word cloud. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Seriously, like executives spend months making word clouds on a dry erase board. Seriously.
Yep.
I'll jump in for a second here too. I had mentioned in the group thread, the last thing I mentioned was about brand evolution. If you think that you're trying to find a target, be aware that the target's always going to be moving, that your identity is always going to be changing and evolving. Otherwise, you're not growing in your craft. So it's okay to feel like you're not exactly hitting it. And it's okay if it feels really nebulous, because that's still part of the process. I mean, when you start putting together a website in sales, people are going to want to know, who are you in relationship to your business? What is it that you're doing? What are you doing for me? Am I the right person to be engaging with you? Those are the standard things, but who you are is always going to be evolving. And because you are always evolving, the rest is going to be changing too. So again, it's like there's no boxes here. There's just this open blank canvas.
How does like a style guide, logos, that sort of thing fit in? That's all after you like decide on the brand, as far as like what words make up the brand or describe the brand?
Yeah.
Yeah,
go ahead, Amy.
in our process, like the company goes through the entire story brand. What is that, 7 steps? I don't even. Yeah. Before getting to anything visual or even voice, you know, how you're going to write, how you're going to present.
Yeah, that makes sense. I tend to think people overdo it on logos. I don't, maybe I'm just not thinking about that right. But I tend to think that if you get, to me, the coming up with a personal brand, particularly for like where you're at, Cami, or where you're at, Sarah, it's really about like, who do you want to be in the world? I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like when people look at you, what do you want them to see? And how do you want to show up in the world? And they really trying to articulate that. And then once you've articulated it, doing what you need to do to be able to own it, to like really step into it. Is basically that the articulating and then the owning. I think what I've found for myself personally is like once I've done those things, then it's like the world starts filtering through that lens in a way that things start to make more sense. Like Cami, what you were saying about that knowing a lot about, or knowing a little about a lot of stuff. I mean, that's me. I mean, that's And that's something I'm really starting to embrace and run with. And I'm actually working on my website, tonyjalbrecht.com. And that's a challenge that I'm having, is like, how do I put out there when, like, as a creative, like, what am I? Like, I do some writing, I do stuff like this, right? I like make stuff, I make events happen. Like, I build stuff out of wood shittily. Like I do a lot of different things. But like it all falls under this umbrella of like creativity is really important. Like creativity as a source of health and a source of, I mean, almost salvation, as far, which speaks to what you're saying. And say, I think the embracing that for me, then like I don't have to choose, and I'm not going to choose. And there will be times where certain things will stand out, like what, to Nicole's point, that I like how Nicole articulated that there was this artist who does different things and then had to capitalize on something. Like an opportunity presented itself, you lean into it, you go with it. But like, I guess I think of like David Bowie, that like David Bowie, just like that dude was a brand. Like that dude, he was David Bowie, right? And he was able to take that and like go from music to film to just owning pop culture in general, and do all these different things just by virtue of being, all while being David Bowie. And like that
Always
meant something.
Always an interesting example too, because at some point he realized like, oh, I'm also Ziggy Stardust at the same time. I'm David Bowie and Ziggy Stardust. And he just like split it off. And now I've got this new thing. And so that can be, it sounds like that can be part of it too. Cami, or, I mean, my problem is always my reluctance to promote myself. Like I made the silly choice of starting a solo music career. And so then I have to like type my name more than I usually would, right? Or write it down or tell people or say it out loud. And it gets annoying, right? It's like when you say a word too many times, it doesn't sound like a word anymore. And so now I'm finally coming back around to that idea of, oh, it's okay. And so like, but then I'm not a dancer, but I like dancing. And so I put on a costume and I have a different thing to brand now, but I'm still in the like scattering things against the wall phase. And is there a brand for that?
Yeah, and I know you had mentioned you were reading some of those books. Like, do you have anything from that I would be interested to hear anything that has come from reading those kind of along these lines.
Yeah, so the book that I read that's sort of like on point here, it's called Show Your Work. And it's essentially teaching you like to document and film the process and all the messy stuff, and then share it out, so that you're not just sharing the polished thing. Like what's most exciting about for me is when I can see behind the scenes. If I'm listening to music, I want to read the liner notes and figure out who played drums on that track. And I want to watch a documentary about the making of it. And so with social media, there's this pressure, right, that you have to, in order to feed the algorithms, you've got to be pretty consistent and post something every day. And so this is like, film a bunch of stuff, chop it up later, and then start sharing it. But the piece that touches on branding in there was talking about that when you share something, just make sure it's something that that feels true for you. And so share fewer, memes that, even if it was funny, maybe it goes on a different account, not your brand account. And then the other question you ask is, what do I do that, why is this special to me? And part of it is just like, I made it and it took a long time and I worked really hard on it, and it helped me get through this thing. And so that's, I think, where that story comes in. It's like you probably take thousands of photos, Cami, and then share dozens or hundreds of them. And so maybe it's that why share, why are these photos important to you to share? Like, what are you trying to do? For me, the music is like, the music that I publish is just like to document the trajectory of my life almost in a way that touches on common experiences that other people may have had. And the why I share it is because I want people to know I existed, and I want people to know that I saw them too, and I connected with them. But that's all stuff that came up and then I started thinking about because of that little show your workbook. Yeah, but other than that, I don't know anything about branding. I took a marketing class my first semester of college, and they were talking about like how stores will pipe in cents to manipulate the consumer, and that's essentially what marketing is manipulating the consumer. And I was like, oh, I'm going to study philosophy and religion, which is the same thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say I dropped out of the business school before I got to the point where we got to marketing. So, whoops.
Hey, I was just gonna. Oh,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna jump in, and I don't know entirely. I feel like it's relevant, but it may not be. But it's just kind of what's coming up for me. So some of the work that I do with some clients is like vision work. So we take the kind of overall vision, like personal vision, and then at some point go into the branding, into the business, and see how, if they align and if there's any difference between the two. So if someone's got, a personal vision to like live in the woods and, have more free time and all of this, but they're working this other job that is like, too many hours a week, really stressed, So we're seeing how they align. And I love doing vision work anyway. It's just for me, it's a really beautiful process for myself. I've learned a lot about myself doing it. And also with other clients of just giving the space to do it and then seeing what comes, like when you're really connected and seeing what actually comes. So it's just a really basic process, a writing prompt, usually takes about an hour, and then just digging a bit deeper. And I have those, and then I go back to that. And what came out for me is I'm at the moment, I'm doing this other business, but the broader, bigger vision for me, like a longer term, was more like creative director, running creative agency, something like that, that just kind of came out. It felt like it came out of nowhere, but it's clearly there. So I think something around that, and I'd be really happy to run something if anyone wanted to do it, but I find that also then when you're connected with a bunch of people and you're talking about what your broader, bigger vision is, then it's really great to kind of keep aligned to that collectively. So it could be the space to do something like that. And then, I don't know, I feel like it ties in with the branding somewhere. I can't quite articulate how, but I think that feels like, to me, is an important starting point where I tend to start with entrepreneurs and the businesses, and then everything comes from that vision and then values. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there.
No, that's super helpful. And I think I like doing, I like being challenged to do that kind of work, like the vision type work, because that does not come naturally to me. I'm someone who, I love working underneath visionaries, because I can say, I see your vision and I can tell you 1 through 100 steps how we're going to get there, because I can break it all down and I can see, like, if you give me the vision, I can get you there. But it's really hard for me to give myself the vision.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
That's most definitely relevant, Jackie. That's really good. So to me, so that vision is like, where am I going? Or where am I trying to get to? And I think of branding as where am I right now? And what is my lens through which I'm seeing the world? And if I know like the perspective I'm coming from, and I have an idea of where I'm going, then it's more like, let's say, a trajectory than a plan, right? It's that, like, then I'm like on my way toward the vision, and I may get knocked off course and I may go a different direction. And whereas I thought I was going to do one thing, nope, I'm instead going to go do this totally different thing. But it's all on brand, right? Hopefully it's all on brand. Unless I start like being a professional killer. I think that would be off brand for me.
I mean, I can just share some of my experience. Like when I came to Bali, I didn't work for 6 months, and I did a vision session. Was just exploring it, and I wrote down everything that I wanted to happen. And within 4 weeks, it all kind of came to, it was like, I want to work online. I'd like to work with this kind of people. I'd like this much money, and it just all came to fruition. It's the oddest thing, and it's magical when it's aligned, because it's just like setting the intention and being like, okay, where do I want to go? And I find that when people really get connected with that, things line up. But, that's how I think. But yeah.
Yeah, I kind of do a similar like vision exploration as Jackie, just writing, because that's like my medium of just really annoying, like being a toddler. Like Cami, you said your why was to create to survive or whatever. And I would say, but why, whatever you're creating right now, why aren't you making cakes that are works of art? Why this? Why? And then I just write about that forever. Why this? And maybe I find out that's not what I want to be doing. I find out, wait, like Jackie was saying, I have this whole other vision that's simmering back there that I hadn't given any light to. So yeah, I like to do that in like all aspects of life, those vision-y writing sessions.
Story brand script could be its own like hour-long conversation without a problem. I definitely, we'll put the link in here. And they've got some tools online where you can like go in and do your own story brand script. And yeah, I'm happy to follow up in the comments to this event with just kind of laying out what the basic framework of it is. Like Annie said, it's based on the hero's journey. Yeah.
I think I would enjoy going through that, and maybe like in real time, like in an hour session with other people. Just sort of, you too, Sarah, yeah, kind of get the feedback. So maybe like we can just toss an event on the calendar at some point where we all like, here's what we're looking at, we share the screen and workshop it. Because I think like that the beauty of this group, the Rowdy Creatives, is that we have access to people in all these different skill sets now, who are invested in helping one another, right? Yes, thank you. I tried to pronounce access. And it could be really great. So I would love to do this again.
That can be arranged.
I do think the piece of the story brand that we didn't really address, or the piece that the story brand brings up that we didn't address, was the other person at the end of the transaction, right? Whatever this is, the service, the product, whatever. You have to figure out why you're doing it first, whatever you're doing. But it's also about recognizing that you're not trying to sell to anyone. You don't want to sell to anyone who needs a photographer. You want to connect with people who have, the specific things that you're looking for, the specific values or beliefs or whatever. And that's what the story brand kind of centers the customer as the hero of the story, basically.
Yeah, it's a key distinction. And I think what makes the story brand so powerful, right? That when you're doing a story brand, you are the guide. Yeah, and the person you're trying to connect with is always the hero.
You're the Gandalf. Yes.
I'm not a Gandalf. You can be Gandalf.
Gandalf. Who are you in that story? You identify with a different character?
Which one's always hungry? That's me. Ma'am.
I'd rather be Obi-Wan. Can I be Obi-Wan? I mean, Gandalf is awesome.
He's Jar Jar Binks.
That's actually, yeah, that's actually, thank you.
And I do want to, before we hop off, address specifically writers branding. You know, I know like it's huge in the writer world to have separate brands for separate genres, right? And I think that comes down to who you're trying to connect with. I know in the YA world, there's 1,000,001. Well, J.K. Rowling does it, you know, authors who have one name for their young adult books and one name for their whatever else. So like she writes murder or something. But at the same time, if they were doing another adult genre where there might be crossover, they keep the same name. Do you know what I mean? It goes back to, you know, who are you trying to connect with? And if you need to keep teenagers from reading the sex scenes in your other books and you know stuff like that. But the multi-branding thing is really common with writers, and I don't think you need to be afraid of it, you know.
So would you recommend that Sarah think about it as two distinct brands?
I
Like
would
her-
recommend Sarah define who she's trying to connect with in each service. If you're writing murder mystery and editing murder mystery, no, I would keep the same brand. If you're writing YA and want to edit anything under the sun, that'd probably be a different brand.
Do they?
It's also very common now for authors to, you know, freelance and stuff like that. So we're like in a time where I think personal branding is, like Nicole said, constantly evolving, and we're all used to that. Especially with social media and, you know, everybody sharing everything.
Mhm. Right on. So we've been rolling for an hour. Cami, Sarah, I mean, Nathaniel, if it's, I'm happy to roll a little longer if you'd like to. I'm also happy to call it evening. And if anybody, are there other burning questions you want to get into?
For me, I'm about done, and I feel like I've got way more than enough like things to go look at and
Good.
start reading about. And I feel better for having attended. So thank you all for sharing your knowledge and your experiences. And I hope that we can. I would love to do a vision session. Jackie, I think everybody on this call has got at least an hour in them, you know, of like stuff that you can share. And then I can share a bunch of stuff like what hasn't worked. So let's do this again.
Right on. So we'll do we'll get a vision session. That'd be awesome, Jackie. And we'll get a story brand session up, and yeah.
Can I suggest that we end with watching the video?
All right.
Jackie, I'll contact you about setting up a time and putting up an event for the vision session.
Jackie asking how to get in the room because I didn't make it. I really was too busy making that stupid video to think about anything else. Okay, here we go.
I haven't had a chance to see if you've answered my questions yet or not.
Which ones? Okay. Oh.
About the video.
Oh, I have not seen your questions. All right. Let's see if I can go. Can I go whole? Yeah. All right.
Oh, good. Jen is also delighted and confused. That makes me feel better.
Good. Are you gonna?
Once again, so impressed with you guys and your lighting.
Seriously.
Thank you.
All
right.
Of our newly arrived guests associated with the UK. Tonight we will be bringing you a quintessentially British performance.
Yeah, I don't know what that is down there that's moving.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler of the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. To die, to sleep, no more.
Did I hear you say that you don't know what that creepy thing in the first shot is? Is your house haunted?
The floating thing. I have no idea what that was.
I
You
think,
gotta make another video about that.
I mean, I think it was just the vent pushing a piece of paper, but yeah, I'm not sure why it would have looked like that.
Is that in the house or in the shed?
That was the house. That was our house. Yeah.
You should list that house immediately.
Yeah, you should be alarmed, probably.
I'll take that under advisement. I will attend to your questions, Sarah. I will.
It's fine. I mean, now I didn't hear the like British intro before, so I think that answered some of my questions.
Oh.
Was
yeah.
it the bad accent? Maybe that threw you off. The horrible accent.
That was great. It was really great. That was a surprise for me, Tony.
Thank you. Yes.
And Seville did not expect the dance.
So good.
Yes. So I am. I'm not an actor. I am not a dancer. I am not a video maker. I am none of these things.
You are now.
somehow it's all on brand. Huh?
Huh? Freeze frame.
And with that, I'm out of here. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
It was really good to see you, Jackie.
Bye.
Nice to
Jackie,
meet
please
you
don't
all.
leave us. Don't leave us. Please visit us.
Yeah.
See you soon. Bye.